Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV presents Beyond the Rim. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Queen AhmadiyyahShakur. Also on Instagram at what is my Instagram? Oh, at divine_goddess_27. On Twitter at dgoddess27. On Brighton and Patreon at Queen AhmadiyyahShakur. Okay. So hello. Good to see you all in the chat. So let's go ahead and get started with the people. So now let me tell you all about the story that inspired Wes Craven to write the movie A Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Very scary movie. And in fact, when I used to watch scary movies, I don't really watch them much now. But Wes Craven was one of my favorites. Stephen King first, but Wes Craven probably second. Okay. So, you know, there was a group of Cambodian refugees that actually ended up coming to America because they had all this, you know, stuff going on in their country, right? They were trying to be taken over by a communist government. They had, you know, many people were getting killed and they were like being at war and all this stuff, you know, between different governments and all this stuff. So a lot of them just fled to the United States. Some of them went to other places, but the ones that came to the United States, many of them started complaining about having these problems when they would sleep at night. They would wake up out of their sleep saying that they felt like some spirit or something was chasing them, felt like they had pressure on their chest. Sometimes they would wake up screaming and be flailing all across the bed and everything. And then there was one particular story about a specific young man. So we're going to talk about him, because his story is actually what inspired Wes Craven. So they say, if you die in a dream, can you really die in real life? The notion and the basis of Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street. That's what the question was. Now, in the 1984 slasher, several teens fall victim to Freddy Krueger, who preys on them in their nightmares, which in turn kills them in reality. Now, the classic has been known to give fans nightmares of their own. But what's even spookier is that Craven revealed he was actually inspired after reading an article in the LA Times about a family who moved to the United States from Cambodia. They say things were fine at first, and then suddenly the young son was having these very disturbing nightmares. He told his parents that he was afraid that if he went to sleep, that the thing that was chasing him in his dreams would get him and kill him. So he tried to stay awake for days at a time. Now, if you remember, that's exactly what was going on in the movie. And you remember the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the girl named Nancy. What was her name? Nancy. I don't remember her last name, but her name was Nancy, remember? And she was telling her parents about something chasing her in her sleep, and she was staying up for days, and her mother and her father didn't believe her. They kept trying to tell us all in her head and all that stuff. That's basically what this boy's parents were telling him. And that's one part of the aspect that he took from the story. Now, when he finally fell asleep, his parents thought the crisis was over. Then they heard screams in the middle of the night. By the time they got to him, he was dead. Now, can you imagine your child sitting there telling you he's afraid to go to sleep because something is chasing him in his dreams, and he feels if he goes to sleep, it's going to kill him, and then he dies in his sleep, but before he does, you hear him screaming? Clearly scary. So when they got in there, he was dead. He died in the middle of a nightmare. Here was a youngster having a vision of a horror that everyone older was denying. Nobody believed him. That became the central line in Nightmare on Elm Street. Dreaming about death is unsettling, although many times you wake up right before you die in your dream. Yeah, that's usually what happens to me. Anytime I dreamt about something like that, I would always wake up before. And I was always told from a child that if you die in your sleep, that you die in reality. How many of you ever heard that? Somebody put ones in the chat if you heard that before. If you ever heard when you were growing up that if you die in your sleep, that you die in real life. Or if you're falling and you hit the ground, that you die. I heard that when I was a kid. Anybody else? Okay, there you go. Right, exactly. Now, So they say dreaming about death is unsettling, although many times you wake up right before you die in your dream. There are also plenty of dream interpretations about dying in your dreams. But can dying in your dreams lead to you dying in real life? Well, sci-fi notes the myth gained popularity in the 1990s, and while there wasn't much scientific evidence, there were cases of sudden unexpected nocturnal death syndrome. That's what they call SUNDS, SUNDS. That's what they called it back in the 80s. It meant sudden unexpected nocturnal death syndrome. Now, the CDC reported on sudden deaths during sleep, according to Sci-Fi. They said these incidents were reported as isolated to populations who immigrated from Southeast Asia. These were between ages of 25 to 44 and were considered otherwise healthy. These people who all died in their sleeps from SUNDS, yeah, these people were otherwise healthy. And the crazy thing is, they were immigrants from Southeast Asia. Now, how does that make sense? And they were all men. Now, between 1981 and 1988, a total of 117 cases were reported in which hearts just stopped during sleep. Even stranger was the fact that no individuals had any prior history of cardiac events, with only one of them having it in a family history, but not having it themselves. Now, the outlet notes that the Journal of the American Heart Association posted about refugees exhibiting high levels of depression and anxiety after relocating to the States. It's possible that the anxiety triggered night terrors, which led to cardiac arrest. That's what some think. Sci-Fi also notes that large amounts of adrenaline from being scared to death can cause damage to the heart, liver, lungs, and kidneys. Now, a surge in adrenaline reportedly causes calcium to enter the cardiac cells, which causes the heart to contract. So they said, thankfully, with each passing year, cases of SUNDS decrease. So now you can safely rewatch the slasher. Let me tell y'all something. They say these people's hearts stop, right? Let me tell you something. They make it sound like they had heart attacks. Okay, well, the doctors whose notes I read clearly acted like they didn't know exactly what caused it. And I wrote it down. Hold on, let me get those receipts real quick. Yeah, they seem to not know why their heart stops. Okay, and they didn't call it a heart attack. They called it something else, some type of I don't remember where I wrote it, but they didn't call it a heart attack. I'll tell you that much, okay? That's what they didn't call it. Anyway, let me go on to the next article, because this is clearly juicy and also crazy, right? Hold on, let me read some of these comments. A few years ago, I had a dream about Freddy and I was whooping his ass because he was trying to fight me. Crazy dream. King Daniel, are you serious? I believe you could and will die if you're scared enough in your sleep. As alive, I believe you could. I think so too. I absolutely think so. Who have flying dreams and can't get down like me? Oh, Kendla, I have flying dreams, but I can always get down. But I do have dreams that I'm flying. And it's so crazy because I just take off running and then I just put my arms out and start flying. That's how it all goes. So that's real crazy. I love those dreams too. I actually do. Okay. So here's another one. Okay, because I have several articles on this because I thought it was also juicy. Everyone, please get the likes up. Please like and share the video so that we draw more people into the algorithm for the viewing. Okay. Now, when he wasn't busy sharing vital Nightmare on Elm Street information on Twitter, Wes Craven was taking part in a comprehensive oral history of the Elm Street Vulture. The primary players behind the film open up in great detail about what went on during hiring of the cast and the creation of Freddy and the landscape of horror in the early 1980s, with Craven coming off of Swamp Thing. That's another movie I remember that with Adrian Barbeau. I didn't know he made that. But anyway, coming off of Swamp Thing, The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 at the time, and he needed to find something that was truly terrifying, and he found it in real life, so to speak. Now, the way Wes Craven describes it is he came up with the idea for a Nightmare on Elm Street film after reading an LA Times article about a family who had survived the killing fields in Cambodia. They made it to the United States, but a young boy in the family still found himself haunted by the terrible nightmares while he slept. He told his parents that he was afraid that if he slept, the thing chasing him would get him. So he tried to stay awake for days at a time. When he finally fell asleep, his parents thought the crisis ended, and they found him dead in the bed. He died in the middle of a nightmare, and here was a youngster having a vision of horror. Now, the origin of Freddy Krueger, now, a far more psychologically chilling than the parental vendetta that led to the birth of the on-screen Krueger, which also is explained in greater detail in the Vulture history, oral history. Burning the neighborhood murderer in the boiler room of the local school, if you remember that part of the movie. So Wes Craven came up with that part because he said when he was just a boy, this is what Wes Craven said. He said when he was just a boy, he was lying in bed one night and he couldn't go to sleep. So he looked outside, and underneath the street light, there was a man who had on a fedora, and he looked like he had a burnt face. The man was looking at him in a menacing way. So he laid back down in the bed and closed his eyes, and he was scared. So when he looked back out the window, the man was still there glaring at him, right? So that's where he got the idea of how he wanted Freddy to look, because this man had on a fedora and had a burnt face. But also he knew somebody that he went to high school with, and their name was Freddy. And I don't think he liked the guy, but so he named Freddy after that guy. Okay? And then, like I said, with the coupled with the story of the Cambodian refugees who were clearly dying from some type of, fear that they were experiencing in their sleep, that's where he got that from. And another thing too is that they had like a saying among the refugees. They said something about some of them, I think it was something similar to sleep paralysis, but they were basically talking about how there was, they believe that the ancestors, when the ancestors are passed, that they come back to watch over them, right? I believe the same thing. That's who I say are the angels, not angels with wings. I think that's just silly. But I think angels or guardian angels, or whatever you want to call them, spirit guides, I think those are ancestors who passed on into the spirit realm and they're watching over us. But so what they were saying is they have ancestors or spirits who protect their descendants. This is what the Cambodians think. And so they said, but some of these are evil. Okay? So they felt like when these people were going to sleep, some of them said they feel like the ancestors were angry at them from fleeing their home country and then coming to the United States. And so they felt like that is why the ancestors were torturing some of them and killing them in their sleep. But then some people of them said they thought it was evil spirits who knew they didn't have protection any longer because the ancestors were mad at them. So they came and killed them. So it's just all so crazy, but they believe that some of them, like I said, believe it has something to do with ancestors. And here's what some of them also said. They have said that they would be asleep and feel like something was pressing down on their chest, and they could be aware that something was going on, but they couldn't move, like sleep paralysis, and they could feel like an evil presence in the room. So with that all being said, that sounds really creepy, right? So they say after suffering, they talk about how Freddy Krueger became a work of fiction that was based on a real nightmare. After suffering at the hands of Pol Pot and the Cameroon, as well as living after the aftermath of the Vietnam War. Hmong refugees fled Southeast Asia for the safety of America. However, their terrifying and horrifying experiences left a mark on them, and their tragic history seemed to follow them to their new home. Shortly after arriving in America, many of the refugees began dying in their sleep with no clear cause. This led to the headlines that would eventually inspire Wes Craven to create A Nightmare on Elm Street. More specifically, to create Freddy Krueger, a murderous menace that invaded people's sleep and killed them. Okay? All so crazy. Like, you would never even think that this stuff had an ounce of truth to it, right? So crazy. I've had experiences like that. I was awake but couldn't move, and evil spirit was present. Yeah. You know, the older people would say that's like a witch riding you. That's what some older people would say, right? Also crazy. Also crazy, people. So that's clearly scary, if you ask me. I mean, whatever it is, I don't want to experience it. I'll take the words for it, okay? That's what I'll do. So now here's one more article. So let's see what this one says. We got some pictures on here of Freddy Krueger that I really don't want to see. Thanks, but no thanks. So anyway, they say Wes Craven inspired by a true story when he created Nightmare on Elm Street, the terrifying killer Freddy Krueger. The film came out in 1985, and the franchise had great popularity. And so rumors of a reboot have been swirling in recent years, and things finally seem to be moving in that direction. So I guess they're going to reboot this movie. Me too, neither. Don't need to experience it to believe it, okay? But at least I will take their words for it. Okay? So, as part of the Nightmare on Elm Street oral history, Craven recounted the story that influenced the creation of Freddy Krueger. And so they talk about him, the terror that caused the boy, to fear going to sleep, and he was awake for days, and he eventually went to sleep, and then he died. And they say the phenomena later became known as the Asian death syndrome, but that wouldn't be Craven's only inspiration for the movie. The writer and director also drew on some of his own personal experiences, especially for Freddy's strange demeanor. Now, as a kid, Craven was once inside his home when a creepy old man walked along the path beside his window. The man stopped and glanced at Craven, scaring him before wandering off. Craven kept it in mind when developing the movie's villain, wondering what psychological factors would compel this man to stop what he was doing just to strike fear in a child. Because the man just stopped in front of his window and scared the crap out of him. Who does that? So Freddy Krueger's name was directly influenced by Craven's childhood bully, Fred Krueger. So the guy's last name was Krueger. I didn't even know that. The bully's name was Fred Krueger. Can you imagine? Now, the bully also influenced the name of the last house on the left's villain, Krug. Freddy's overall look came from Craven's desire for the character to be different than any previous horror figure. Rather than use a mask, Craven wanted Freddy to be terrifying in another way. So he chose to give him scarred skin. His choices proved to be worth it because Craven developed one of the most memorable killers in history. Now, interestingly, one real-life panel to the Freddy Krueger character has only gotten more potent in the decades since Craven's created A Nightmare on Elm Street. Awareness of stranger danger and the worry that pedophiles and other sexual predators might be lurking in what appears to be safe neighborhoods was just the beginning to the rise in the 1980s, and has increased since. It has increased since thanks to the internet allowing instant access and information concerning any registered sex offenders in the area. Now, while his supernatural Freddy Krueger is in some ways representation of the real fear, every parent has of their child's life being ended or brought to ruin by an all too human monster. The legacy behind A Nightmare on Elm Street continues to grow even more even now that Craven is no longer among the living. Hopefully it wasn't too long before Freddy returns to terrify a new generation. Some people are able to kill people in their sleep in real life. You know what? There was a story about that too. Maybe I'll talk about it on True Crime. But there was a guy that said that he absolutely was asleep when he killed this woman, but I didn't believe him. I thought he was frankly lying. Maybe he could have been telling the truth, but I wasn't buying it. He said he was asleep and he killed it in his sleep. Said he was sleepwalking. I don't know. Some things that sound crazy are absolutely true. Okay? So that all been said, that's the story of how they came up with the idea for Freddy Krueger. And I'm going to go ahead. Kendall said demons. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's all crazy, right? You never know what lurks in the mind of these people who write these nefarious stories. And many of these horror stories that we watch, well, they usually get the ideas from real life characters, such as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho with Norman Bates, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Did I say that one already? Yeah. So, and Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, Norman Bates from Psycho, and Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yeah, those all came from the same person, a serial killer by the name of Ed Gein. If you remember, I did a story on him on True Crime on my other channel that got terminated. But yeah, Ed Gein, that's where those stories all came from. They all came from him. Very interesting, people. So Millie says, yes, I heard about that story. He said he was asleep and killed his wife. That's what he said, right? I don't know if I'm buying it, though. What about Michael Myers? Honey, I hope there's no story that led about him. I hope that was all made up, okay? Please don't mention Michael Myers this time of night. I don't know. You know it all, Queen. So intelligent. Thank you, Judah Queen, beloved. But clearly the Queen doesn't know it all. But I do like to read and research. I'm always absorbing information. Okay? Thank you, beloved, for your kind words. And Light One Kingdom says, I remember that story. That story you did was crazy. Thank you. I miss those older true crime stories. That's okay, Jesus Black Christ. I'm going to redo some of them. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. Because now that I have my true crime channel, I'm probably going to just upload them rather than redoing them. Because I clearly have them saved on my computer. Maybe not all of them, but I have most of those stories still saved on my computer. So I'll just re-upload them on the new channel. So with that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. I would like to thank you all for tuning in once again. Now, please make sure that you tune in the morning at 9 a.m. But, you know, I may go on early like I have been doing. It just depends on how many stories I have, and I'm not sure yet. So maybe look for the notifications, or if you don't get a notification, just check around 8 o'clock or whatever, okay? Because if I'm going to do something early, I'll have it posted at least by 8 o'clock, because I'll start around 8:15 or 8:30 if I go on early, all right? Okay, thank you, Jesus Black Christ. So with that all being said, thank you, Queen. Check your email. Okay, beloved. So sorry, little off topic, but they say it was a female that killed the guy and that she thought she was pulling out her taser instead of a gun. Oh, so you're talking about the black guy, Dante Wright? Yeah, I remember reading a headline earlier today. I didn't read the whole article because I didn't have time, but I remember seeing a headline that said something about pulling out a taser. But here's my thing. I understand people make mistakes, but how do you pull out a taser or pull out a gun instead of a taser? And the thing is this, when you pull out a gun, you have to pull a trigger. I don't buy that when they say something about that. I think they may yell, oh, let me get my taser, just to make it look like that's what they meant to do. But I scarcely think that you can mistake a taser for a gun. I just don't believe it. I'm not buying it. If a gun has a whole trigger, how do you not know that you pulled out a gun? A gun doesn't even feel like a taser in your hand. Trust me, I have both. So I'm just saying, I don't buy that. They're full of shites. Sleep paralysis, dream murders, Ed Gein, the hundreds of murders, decapitations, taxidermy of human flesh. Yes, amazing tribe. Absolutely. Thank you for letting us know you're going to start early, Queen. I really appreciate it. No problem, Jeff ATL. So you all enjoy the rest of this night. I hope to see you all in the chat in the morning. Until next time, I will talk to you all again soon. Peace.